Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Commodity TV, a new edition of our online interview series. Today, we want to talk to Marc Henderson, the CEO of Laramide Resources. And gentlemen and ladies, that is uranium. That's what we like. Hey, good morning to Canada. How are you, Mike?
Yeah, good morning, Jochen. Good to see you again.
Great to see you. Thank you very much. I want to disclose also upfront that I'm a shareholder of the company, long-term shareholder. And finally, our pains are really released with the again rising uranium price, which is good. I mean, everybody suffered like with that low price environment. Now everything is looking really fantastic. The outlook for or the renaissance for nuclear power is there. And it looks like Laramide is really benefiting of that. So maybe you can give us a short overview on the company, and then we go in medias res into your projects.
Sure. Yes. Well, we're a developer, as you know, and I appreciate you being a shareholder, of course. We think it's going to get a lot more interesting directly ahead now because a whole lot of positive events have kind of come together now, particularly in 2024. I mean, it's kind of been probably the best year you've seen in nuclear, maybe in the whole entire history of the nuclear power business, to be honest. We've had a couple of waves of huge support for nuclear in the 70s and then in the decade of the 2000s, where China did its big build out, and this is probably the third big wave of positive support for nuclear, where nuclear is going to start really getting market share. And so, as a developer, as one of the suppliers that are ultimately going to feed into that positive dynamic, into that supply chain. We're very nicely positioned. We have two very large development scale projects, one in the United States and one in Australia. They're both kind of about the same size. They both have the potential to get bigger and better, and they're both of the size that are very much of interest to the utilities because of the scale of the projects, because of the life of the reserves, because of the scale of the production. One is further ahead in terms of permitting, which is the one in the United States. And the one in Australia now will get on with permitting because we had a political impediment for a long, long time there in Australia, which has kind of had a love-hate affair with uranium, if you will. But they're very much more, I think, going forward, are going to get on board with basically all things nuclear. And I think that bodes very, very well for us going forward.
Okay, super. Then let's start with Queensland, Australia, because I read in your press release from 14th November, before we come to those results, I read that the elections maybe are going into your favor. So I just checked that, and now 88% roughly of the votes are counted, and the LNP looks like they are winning. Is that the party which will restart nuclear exploration or nuclear use?
Yeah, well, your exploration for uranium was never, quote unquote, banned. There was no legislation ever in the state governments. It was just a party policy of one of the two political parties, and it's a two-party system, so you tended to trade back and forth in terms of who was running things. In Queensland, in particular, the leftist center party, which was really the anti-nuclear or anti-uranium party, if you will. They were in power for a long, long time. They were in power for 30 of the last 35 years, and they were defeated on October 26th, relatively soundly, and the new government has a majority. And we think it's going to be green light go now for us there, and so we're proceeding accordingly. We're getting organized to really get aggressive on the permitting, and we've also, in anticipation of this, really the last couple of years, we've started to really get back to work on the project in order to showcase the project, but in order also to try and make the project just a little bit bigger. I mean, it was big enough and good enough before, but I think scale matters in the business when you're, in particular to the customers who are the utilities. So a project like this that was scoped at 3.5–4 million pounds previously, we're now trying to, make an effort maybe to get that up to kind of the 5 million pound level, which will require some more resources to support that. And so, in effort to that, we started on drilling really in 2023 in earnest. And then this year we had a big program, 100 holes. We've started to release some of the results from that. We're very pleased with the way that's going. I mean, it's pretty much what we're expecting. We think there's a lot of scope for it to get bigger. We own an enormous land package there that we held all through the bear market, and then we added to it, really. So we have a huge land package that starts in Queensland, spreads over to the west into the Northern Territory. We really as far as we're concerned, we own the district. And, we think this is going to be a real contributor to meaningful uranium supply down the track. And so we're, as I said, we're proceeding accordingly. And we've released maybe half the drill results so far. So there's more drilling to come from there. And I think as that's happening, the company's starting to get more attention, starting to get more traction. We started the year with one brokerage firm covering us from an analyst standpoint. We're up to 4. And so, we think there's great things happening on that front. I mean, watch this space in nuclear in Australia, because they're also talking about a separate issue there, which is nuclear energy. And I know this is also a super hot button issue in your country. And you also have the potential for political change there, I noticed too. So I think that's another development, another possible data point that people are looking at to see if some of these German reactors, because fortunately they haven't started to tear them all down, that those could possibly come back online. So, there's a lot, as I said, there's a lot of positive developments in the space, and politics do matter. I mean, the support of the government does matter to the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I read in your press release that the great thing is that the results demonstrated the uranium mineralization is continuous along strike and potentially joins the 2 deposits of Huarabagu and Chunaguna. I hope I said it correct. It sounds like names from the Aborigines, really. And how important is that if that would happen like that? Would that massively enlarge the project for a future production standpoint?
We think there's a lot of scope there. So those 2 deposits that those deposits are really they're part of a 8-kilometer long strike length, and they're separately named open pits along that trend. And all these Australian names, you start getting into particularly traditional or Aboriginal type names, or half the street names in Australia you'd find quite entertaining.
Yeah.
Those have the potential effectively to be expanded along strike, but it's really not so much the depth, because this is a shallow deposit that'll be mined by open pit. The whole project is contemplated as an open pit series of open pits at the moment. Okay. But there's potential there. There's also potential for other parts of the property that we really never looked at very hard in the last cycle. And so that's probably where you have the most ultimate scope for growth. But honestly, once you get to a scale that you've got a project that is sort of in that £5 million a year level, because that has a certain amount of capex attached to it, really based on the throughput, because it's the amount of throughput you'll be putting through a mill.
Absolutely.
You probably really want to get going, and you'll have and you also, if you've got 12 or 15 years of life, which is kind of the mine life we'd be targeting. So when you get those 2 metrics together, and you get the cost profile that puts you in the lowest part of the cost curve, or the lowest quartile, you've really got something that, that should really be of interest to the utilities. And that really should be what drives your valuations at the end of the day. These projects are going to get built. They're going to be the ones that are the most robust, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely. I saw also that you found nice values of gold with the uranium associated. That's also interesting. I mean, 4 meters with 30.9 grams, it's almost an ounce gold.
Yeah, no, we've seen some good gold in one of the deposits where, we're not sure particularly, to be honest, we're not sure 100% why yet. We're kind of vectoring in on that a little bit, see if we can't develop, some kind of a gold component there that would be meaningful to the economics. But, it certainly makes it interesting for the whole land package. Now, in our other, as we get further to the west in the land packages in the territory, and this is an asset that we acquired from Rio Tinto that had held it for a long, long time, never really done anything with it. There's a potential for a lot of other metals in that, all the suite of rare earth metals. There's potential for some tin. There's potential for copper. I mean, so it's an interesting land package. If you're fortunate enough to get one of these big land packages,
definitely.
In Australia, you kind of want to be able to hold it all together, and you get to work on it over a reasonable period of time.
Yeah, that's right. So I saw also the next steps are pre-feasibility EIS and mine studies. Has something of that already commenced, or is that something which starts in 2025?
So you referencing the economic studies?
Yeah, I'm referencing to your slide 5 in the presentation when you said next steps are pre-feasibility, then an EIS and mine studies. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
So.
the economics. There is an economic study from
Mm-hmm,
which was really the second one we did on the project. That was done
mm-hmm,
back in 2016. The costs are going to be out of date. Obviously, the costs will get inflated, but the price
mm-hmm,
we used on the revenue line was $65, and the
mm-hmm,
term price is 80. Probably headed
mm-hmm,
to 100. So those numbers, in all probability, are going to offset each other to some degree. Maybe it might even be a beneficial. Obviously, as you scale it up from
mm-hmm,
3.5, 4 million pounds
mm-hmm.
to
Yeah, of
five,
course.
if we're able
Yeah.
to do that, you'd have some obviously cost benefit on that as
Mm-hmm,
well. I think we're going. The sequence is Joachim, is probably going to be more that we're gonna incorporate all this drilling we've done there into a new resource or updated resource. That includes one satellite deposit that's never been in the resource called Long Pocket. We're targeting that for Q1 next year. After
mm-hmm,
that, we're going to assess whether it makes sense to do a relatively quick update of the basic economics of the whole
mm-hmm,
thing rather than a pre-fees just yet.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Just because our reluctance to do anything in terms of detailed engineering studies and costing is I think we want to do that closer to when we see the finish line on the permitting, just so that the economic numbers don't get stale dated because you interview a lot of people in the mining business. Studies that were done in
mm-hmm,
2021 for projects that got built in 23, 24, everyone
mm-hmm,
was shocked when the numbers, no one can hit the numbers. So I
mm-hmm.
think you really want to have those closer in time, at least until we get to a scenario where you don't think inflation's running, five, six
Yeah, of
percent
course.
on
Yeah, yeah,
costs.
yeah. That's for sure. Absolutely. Okay, so this is so far in good standing. Now let's see how everything comes out after the elections. That's fine. So I would say Australia is something, yeah, for the real future with production. Um, I saw also La Salle. This is something where you have already offtake and process negotiations, and the reopening is the next step. But it looks like yeah, let's call it a smaller production, but it would help with cash flow, right?
Yeah, on that you're talking about LaSalle, and that
Yeah.
would be really a satellite feeder into the mill in Utah that's owned by Energy
Hmm.
Fuels. The timing's really up to them. I mean, obviously they know about it. They know about all the
Mm-hmm.
resources in the region. We have an active, ongoing dialogue. Um, they seem to be prioritizing rare earths a little bit over uranium at the moment. I think at some point, particularly as prices go up, and utility um, interest in the United States
Hmm.
and their willingness to pay, above this level of pricing gets
Yeah.
better. I think certainly as you trend towards 100, those sorts of things start making a lot more sense, and I think you'll see something happen closer in time to when those things
Mm-hmm.
develop. I think on the utility side, and if you watch the term price, because the term
Mm-hmm.
price is incredible and has really marched steadily
Mm-hmm.
higher since second quarter of 2020, uh, really without any pullbacks, which is
Mm-hmm.
astonishing. That's the real price. That's the industry price that the industry has to pay, really. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we're above 80 now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the industry, it took them a long time to get comfortable this cycle above, because the last cycle we kind of was okay. We're okay with 50. And then we had a long hiatus. And then this cycle has been a bit of an adjustment, obviously. And I think the utilities are cautious by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And they've sort of gotten comfortable with 80 now. But to get them comfortable with 100, is that going to be
Mm-hmm.
something that happens in 2025? I
I
can't
think
tell you.
so.
But I think
Yeah.
the reality is, given what everybody knows is on the supply side, it's a finite number of things.
Yeah.
And the demand that isn't going down, Microsoft's apparently now going to be a customer. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see pricing like that. And I think for American projects, particularly American hard rock projects, they're not in the lowest part of the cost curve. And I think
Mm-hmm.
they probably need that kind of pricing. And
Yeah.
then I think you'll see the U.S. start to kick into gear in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
I could see the U.S. getting up to 15, 20 million pounds over a period of time
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
if the new
definitely.
administration walks the
And you need
walk
it
the way they're
really.
talking the talk,
Mm-hmm.
then and you take the suite of projects that's out there, I think that kind of number is achievable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, super. Then let's talk about Church Rock because that's your second, large project, which looks really, really good because it's also ISR, not conventional mining. So here also from the cost side, it looks really interesting, and I think it's also maybe easier to get that thing up and running. So what's the status there? How are we looking with permits and construction?
Well, Church Rock benefits from the fact that it already has an NRC license. It's had that for a long time. We're going to
Mhm.
go into a application called timely renewal, and then we hope to extend that for a further period of time. Obviously, so that's really the federal permitting side. We need one state permit, which we're actively working on. There's test work
Mhm.
going on now in a lab in Alamos, New Mexico, which people are probably familiar with. Anybody that saw the Oppenheimer movie, that was kind of that's the center of all nuclear excellence and research and everything in the United States. And it's a Department of Energy facility. And we have a grant from the Department of Energy to do this test work. And that data supports our permit application, which will be sent to the New Mexico Environmental Department. And then when we get that final
Mhm.
permit, we'll effectively be shovel ready. And then we can start production on the lines of the PEA that we released back in January of this year. And
Mhm.
it sees the project starting at 1,000,000 pounds, and it can ultimately be scaled up pursuant to that NRC license. Under,
Mhm.
we have to do some restoration, and then you go to phase
Yeah.
2, et cetera. And ultimately, we have a plant that has a 3,000,000 pound capacity that we're allowed to
Mhm.
build.
Mhm. So what would that mean? Production start like 3 years from here?
It's hard to, you proceed with caution when you talk about permit dates and what have you, just
Mhm.
because it's out of your control. But I mean, I think a date that where the test work is probably going to be done by the end of 25, and then however long it takes to get that through the New Mexico Environmental Department would see
Mhm.
us basically being in a position to move ahead.
Mhm.
So certainly, I think it's certainly the 2020s. Would it
Mhm.
be possible in 27? Sure. 28? Absolutely. As you
Mhm.
get further out in
Okay.
time, it seems a lot more likely. Now, I would
Yeah.
say about the new administration, the the steps that they've announced so far, particularly in regards to the fact they've got this energy coordination effort that's going to happen with some kind of council that is interdisciplinary
Mm.
from all the different departments, because that's what you have in any permitting scenario, and is one of the reasons the U.S. has gotten really bogged down is they don't have that common um,
Mhm.
policy approach where they push
Mm.
from the
Yep.
federal government down to try and get things to Canada. I would say is kind of
Mhm.
a bit the same on that. That's why things take so long here.
Mhm.
But they're really going to do that and prioritize things and really try and get everybody on the government team, if you will, effectively pulling in the same direction. And I think
Mhm.
that has a real chance to make a difference on the timelines. We
Okay.
don't know that. It's just, but certainly what they've articulated would be a net plus for certainly industries like ours.
Mhm. Okay, super. That's perfect. That helps a lot. Then I saw something really interesting. In September, you acquired in Kazakhstan 6,000 square kilometers, or the option, I would say. And yeah, what did you make to say, hey, now we are in the US, we are in Australia, now we go to Kazakhstan? How did you come on that?
Well, one of the things I've thought, and I referenced it earlier, is we've got this massive supply demand deficit.
Hmm.
The demand is, and the amazing thing is, this whole bull market started when the demand was positive, but you looked up to 2035, it had a nice growth trajectory, and the demand profile has just gotten stronger and stronger as this bull market has proceeded because of things like reactor extension. So they take a reactor from 60 years to 80 years. It needs 20 years more fuel. It needs
Hmm.
a lot more uranium ultimately. And so and then of course you got the tech companies now have
Hmm.
basically ripped the band-aid off and told everybody, well, actually this compute power that we need takes a lot of energy and there isn't enough energy in the current grid. So we've got to sort of step up here and put our hand up and say, we're going to have to be involved in how
Hmm.
we're going to get all this incremental electricity demand
Hmm.
sorted out. And that's why you saw Microsoft get involved with the restart
Of
of
course.
3 Mile Island. But the supply side is the same. I mean, there haven't been a lot of new discoveries. The projects are proceeding quite slowly. There's a big wave of supply potentially coming maybe around 2030, 31 from Canada, but that's it. And so it's pretty obvious, and it has been for me for a long time, that we're going to have a greenfield exploration wave in this uranium cycle. And the single best place on the planet to find more uranium is Kazakhstan. And I guess we were surprised because we were offered this opportunity. We were surprised because the country really had opened up back in 2018 and adopted a kind of Western mining code and everything else. They really are trying to incentivize inbound investment, really to look for copper, to look for uranium, to look for oil. And you were able to get very good positions, early stage positions in fantastic ground right next to all the existing producers on trends that are likely that you'll find more of these paleo channels and you'll find more uranium. And so, we said this is very, very good opportunity risk reward wise. The annual cost of carrying all this land position is doing work on is probably around $3 million, which is really nothing in the business. And it just seemed like a fantastic opportunity. And so we said, yeah, we're going. This is something we really think we want to do. We weren't sure. We weren't sure what the reaction would be. And the market reaction has been a bit divided on it. Because people, worry about geopolitics and things like that. But the reality of the Kazakhstan is they're the biggest producer in the world, uranium producer in the world. It all comes from ISR. They're very, very good at ISR. Having them as your partner, operating partner, is not a terrible thing. If you ask me, they're high quality deposits. They're obviously better than a lot of the other deposits in the world and easier. And they aren't having they don't typically have the same kind of issues that some other people are experiencing because the startups have been slow and underperforming so far. And you're looking for something big. We're not looking for 10 million pounds. We're looking for probably the minimum threshold of something we'd be interested in is probably 30 to 50 million pounds, Church Rock or bigger. And so, we looked at it and said, this is a pretty interesting opportunity. And we kind of, in a way, have a little bit of a first mover advantage because, you were able to go in there and this private company, introduced us to it. And we said the land that they had selected would have been the same land that anybody going there would have selected. So, watch this space again. It's very, very early. It's high impact if it works. The risk reward, metrics are fantastic on it. And in a perfect world, we'll hopefully get a rig in the ground because the nature of finding these things, you really have to drill them. We'll hopefully have a rig in the ground by maybe third quarter next year. We've got to do a lot of data compilation, what have you, ahead of time before we really select the initial targets. It's made up of 22 separate concession applications. So there's a lot of opportunity to over a long period of time to have a nice positioning.
So then the question is, of course, as I think you will drill, of course, also next year a lot. What's money in the bank? Are you financed for that? What's the situation of the company?
Well, next year we'll probably, I would say the upper end of any kind of budget thing would be probably $15 million, something like that. The lower end, because we're mostly engaged in the most high priority things in the company now are getting the permits in order to allow you to develop these projects. The low end of the range is a number like a $5 million number. We haven't done an equity issue for, I guess, well over a year. And that was the first time we'd done an equity issue for a decade. So we're very judicious and deliberate when we issue equity because we're big shareholders ourselves. So at some point we'll do some kind of an equity issue. The interesting thing that's happened is with all these new developments that have happened, including the tech companies coming in and blessing nuclear is really a development that nobody in the business saw coming. And it's obviously macro positive. And you've got all sorts of new opportunities that have opened up as a result of that. You've got those kind of companies. You've got private equity companies. You've got obviously the royalty companies at some point are going to be interested in this space because it's a space that it's really underrepresented in every royalty portfolio. So we have options. But we'll do something. Getting money to do to develop our business plan at $80 going higher that's probably not the most important issue in the company, to be honest. I mean, it'll get sorted out, and I think then people won't ask about it anymore. I mean, part of the whole thing is people spend a lot of time thinking about this. So
yeah, okay, super. No, I mean, that looks all great. So the most important thing you want to achieve next year?
Oh, I think the most important thing we want to achieve next year is probably getting our initial permit application or intent to permit into the government in Queensland would probably be the number one thing, and then the next thing would be obviously completing the study that we're doing at Los Alamos, so we can finalize that U.S. permit.
Okay, super, perfect. So we wish you well for that. All the best, good luck, because we need your uranium in the future, definitely. And yeah, thank you very much for your time, Mike.
No, thanks, Jochen. Appreciate the opportunity, and of course, appreciate your support as a shareholder.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll do so. Yeah, ladies and
Good things
gentlemen,
ahead.
that was, yeah, you too. Thank you. Yeah, that was Marc Henderson, the CEO of Laramide Resources. And you heard it, really a lot of good projects here in the US, in Australia, and now also in Kazakhstan working. And honestly, the future looks really bright for nuclear. It looks bright for uranium. And as Mark alluded to, we haven't had not enough exploration in the past. And we really need those new projects. And also Laramide will be, yeah, within the next, hopefully 3 to 4 years, a producer of uranium. So that looks really good. I'm a shareholder. You should really check out this company. Thanks for watching us, and bye-bye from Switzerland.